My name is Iris Mauss, and I'm a professor of social and personality psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. I want to talk about resilience. Yeah, so there's many different ways of defining resilience. I would define it as somebody responding to a stressor or adversity better than what might be expected in a particular cultural context. And so it's important to note in that definition that it doesn't mean that you're totally unflappable, totally unmoved in the face of potentially really traumatic or stressful experience. It just means that you're doing a little bit better than what one might expect and a little bit more quickly so. It's very important in human life how we deal with adversity, trauma, and stress, in that unfortunately we can't wave a magic wand and make those things go away. And they have potentially really terrible effects on human life. And resilience is very interesting to me because it indicates that humans can overcome those terrible experiences, still have a good and meaningful life despite having those experiences. And it's also interesting from a practical perspective, because if we study people who are resilient, the rest of us might be able to learn how we can become more resilient, like the resilient people. There's many ways of studying resilience because it's a multifaceted phenomenon. And we can study it by asking people questions about their lives, kind of big global questions. But we can also study it sort of in a microscopic way, if you will, in the laboratory using stressor analogs. So we study how people react to stressors in the lab. And of course, in the lab, we can't give people truly traumatic stressors. We wouldn't want to do it, and it would be unethical. One way that we have studied in the lab stress is by showing people short emotional film clips. It turns out Hollywood is very, very good at making people upset in short periods of time. And it's actually, people choose to pay money to see upsetting and sad films. And so it's actually ethical to bring people in the lab, and yet you can evoke a true, what we call negative emotion, like distress or upset or sadness, by showing people even a 2 or 3 or 5 minute film clip in the lab. One thing that we do is we study how people manage their emotions, how they encounter their emotional responses to stressful laboratory experiences. So, for example, we show them one of our sad film clips and a theme of loss, for example. And then we instruct everybody to use cognitive reframing, which is a type of emotion regulation that relies on the human capacity to change perspectives, to think about emotional events in different ways. And we ask our participants, can you please think about the situation in a way that makes it a little bit less impactful emotionally. And then we measure how much they're actually able to turn off their negative emotional response. It turns out, when we do this in the lab, some people are incredibly effective at finding a way of thinking about the situation, this really painful situation, in a way that makes it a little bit less sad and maybe even injects some positive emotion like hope or strength. And other people are really bad at that. They try, but they can't really find a way of changing the way they think about that situation. Or they find a way, but it doesn't translate into a better emotional response. And then many people are somewhere in the middle. It's sort of that same idea. There's a continuum. And then we look at whether that capacity to use cognitive reframing, which sometimes is called reappraisal, how that links up with this bigger picture, real life resilience. And it turns out that the people who, in this micro way, can use their own thoughts to dampen emotional responses to an emotional film clip, those same people are more resilient in their own lives as a whole. Important to note that it's a dimension. It's not a category. So it's not like some people just are resilient, other people are not, but it's a continuum. There's so many encounters and experiences where we see resilience in the world, and probably anybody who's listening to this can think of somebody who experienced something incredibly stressful, maybe even traumatic, and came out okay, possibly even better than before. That phenomenon, there's actually a really beautiful term for it that was coined by Anne Maston, who's a developmental psychologist, and she called it ordinary magic, which really captures this idea that there's something magic about humans overcoming terrible things, and yet humans do it all the time. I love a cartoon that I showed my class on the topic of resilience, which is a little bit hard to describe, but basically it shows this, I think it's a kid actually, kind of lying down, completely exhausted on a table, and there's a cannon shooting lemons at them from the side. And on the other side of the kid, you see all these like jars of lemonade that have been filled. So this kid or person has made a lot of lemonade from lemons already, and now they're just done. And I don't even know, it's hard to describe why I like it so much, but I think I like it because, number one, it illustrates resilience. This kid has made a lot of lemonade already from the lemons, but also it illustrates that we shouldn't kind of like bludgeon people into resilience. And sometimes I think there's a toxic positivity that pervades the whole idea of resilience, where we've come to expect people to be resilient. And I think it's important to note that just because resilience is possible doesn't mean that we should always expect people to be resilient, especially not on their own, without the help of communities and our society.